On November 24, 1971, an unidentified man using the name Dan Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. What followed became one of the most iconic unsolved cases in American criminal history. Security at the time was minimal. Cooper purchased a one-way ticket with cash, carried only a briefcase, and blended easily with other passengers. Witnesses later described him as a quiet man in his mid-40s, wearing a dark suit, black tie, and sunglasses. Once aboard the Boeing 727, Cooper took a seat near the rear of the cabin. Nothing about his behavior initially raised concern. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. The note stated that he had a bomb. When shown the contents of his briefcase, wires and cylinders arranged in a convincing formation, crew members treated the threat as real. Cooper then issued his demands: $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, a fuel truck ready upon landing in Seattle. He insisted that the passengers remain calm and instructed the crew to cooperate fully. Throughout the ordeal, witnesses reported that he remained controlled and polite. For nearly 2 hours, Flight 305 circled the Seattle area while the FBI arranged the ransom and parachutes. When the plane landed just before 6 p.m., law enforcement vehicles remained at a distance, following Cooper's instructions. The passengers were released unharmed, unaware of the unfolding hijacking. In exchange, Cooper received the cash, mostly $20 bills, and the requested parachutes. He then ordered the flight crew to prepare for a second takeoff. Cooper instructed the pilots to fly toward Mexico City at a low altitude of 10,000 feet, with the flaps partially lowered and landing gear deployed. He also directed that the rear air stair remain unlocked, an unusual feature unique to the Boeing 727. With only the cockpit crew remaining, the aircraft took off once more at approximately 7:40 p.m. Somewhere over the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, between Seattle and Reno, cockpit instruments detected a sudden pressure change. This indicated that the rear air stair had been lowered. When the plane later landed in Reno for refueling, Cooper was no longer on board. He had jumped into a rainstorm at night wearing a business suit, carrying a bag of money, and using one of the parachutes. No one saw him jump. No trace of him was found inside the aircraft, and no confirmed evidence of his survival has ever emerged. The following morning, the FBI launched an extensive manhunt. Search teams combed the rugged terrain thought to be Cooper's landing zone, but the conditions were difficult and the exact jump point uncertain due to strong winds and limited radar data. No parachute, clothing, or remains were discovered. For years, investigators pursued leads, suspects, and confessions, none of which resulted in a definitive conclusion. In 1980, a young boy on the banks of the Columbia River found a bundle of decayed $20 bills buried in the sand. They matched the serial numbers of the ransom money. This discovery confirmed that at least part of the cash had made it into the river system, but raised new questions about Cooper's survival and the exact flight path. The finding did not bring investigators any closer to identifying the hijacker. Despite decades of suspects, theories, and public fascination, the identity of Dan or D.B. Cooper remains unknown. In 2016, the FBI formally suspended active investigation, acknowledging that further breakthroughs were unlikely. However, the case remains one of the most enduring mysteries in aviation history. To this day, Cooper's leap into the stormy night is remembered as the only unsolved commercial aircraft hijacking in the United States. The D.B. Cooper hijacking endures not just as a crime, but as a symbol of the unknown, an event where a single man, armed with a briefcase and an alias, stepped into history and disappeared. His fate remains one of the greatest unanswered questions of the modern era.
Thank you for watching. Please like and share and subscribe.